Have you ever wondered how one single idea could just completely flip our understanding of life on Earth? Well, today, that's what we're diving into. We're going to follow the breadcrumbs, piece together the clues that led to the theory of evolution, an idea that truly changed everything.
I mean, just look around, right? Our planet is absolutely teeming with this incredible variety of life. But the fossil record, it was showing us a world of ghosts, millions and millions of species that were just gone, forever. Why? That was the question. And for the longest time, nobody had a good answer.
Okay, so to really get how big of a breakthrough this was, we've got to go back in time. Let's set the scene. It's the 1800s. It was this amazing time of global exploration, but all that exploring, it created a giant, messy puzzle for scientists.
You have to imagine every single ship pulling back into a European harbor was just loaded with new specimens. We're talking a flood of new animals, weird plants, bizarre fossils. Naturalists were totally overwhelmed. The sheer volume of stuff just didn't fit with the old, neat and tidy explanations for how life worked. You can almost hear the old ideas starting to crack under the pressure.
All right, before we go any further, we need to lock down one really important word: species. What does it actually mean? Well, in the simplest terms, it's a group of animals that can breed with each other, and crucially, their offspring can have babies too.
Let's take a super simple example. You've got a poodle and a spaniel. They look pretty different, right? But they can have puppies, and those puppies can grow up and have puppies of their own. Bam, same species. Now, think about a horse and a donkey. They can have a baby, a mule. But that mule is sterile. It can't reproduce. That's the key difference that tells us they're different species. And believe me, understanding this little detail was at the very heart of the whole debate.
So this all led to a huge clash of ideas. You had two camps. In one corner, you had some scientists starting to whisper, hey, maybe species aren't set in stone. Maybe they can change over time. Evolve. And in the other corner, you had the big established view, largely from the church, which said, nope, everything was created at once, exactly as we see it today, and nothing ever changes. They called this fixed species. And that was the battle line. And right into the middle of this huge debate walks our main character, a young, super curious naturalist named Charles Darwin. And he was about to set off on a journey that would change his life and our world forever.
So in 1831, a ship called the HMS Beagle leaves England. The plan? A simple 2-year mapping trip. But it didn't quite work out that way. It turned into this massive 5-year odyssey around the globe. And this one trip, from the coasts of Argentina all the way to the bizarre and isolated Galapagos Islands, was the voyage that would turn science on its head.
But here's a detail I love. The real action wasn't just on land, it was inside the captain's cabin. You had Darwin, the curious budding scientist, and then you had Captain Fitzroy, a deeply religious man who was a firm believer in the fixed species idea. Can you imagine? They were apparently locked in these intense arguments for the entire voyage. The whole trip became this floating battle of ideas.
But Darwin wasn't just arguing, of course. While he was traveling, he was observing everything. He was like a detective, slowly, patiently collecting clues to solve what was maybe the biggest mystery of all time.
And here's a fun little fact about our detective. Darwin had let's call it a strange habit. He tended to eat the new animals he was studying. Yeah, his friends used to joke that some species went extinct just because Darwin got hungry. But you know what? This weird quirk actually led to one of his first huge breakthroughs.
Picture this. He's in Argentina. He's just eaten a small, normal-sized armadillo. And then, in the very same area, his crew unearths a fossil. But it's not just any fossil. It's a giant, car-sized armadillo shell. The connection was just staring him in the face. A massive, extinct version looked almost exactly like the little living one from the same exact spot. For Darwin, this was the first major crack in that whole fixed species idea.
Okay, now let's jump over to the Galapagos, because this is where the clues really start piling up. He noticed the giant tortoises, and they weren't all the same. On islands where food was easy to get, low-growing plants everywhere, the tortoises had these big, round, dome-shaped shells and short necks. But on other islands, where the food was scarce and grew higher up, the tortoises had these flatter, saddle-shaped shells and really long necks so they could reach up. It was like they were custom-built for their own specific island.
And it wasn't just the tortoises. He saw the exact same thing happening with the birds. The finches on one island would have these thick, strong beaks, perfect for cracking open tough nuts. But then, on a different island just a few miles away, the finches had these delicate, pointy beaks that were perfect for snatching insects.
It was like each bird had been given the exact right tool for the job, depending on which island it lived on.
So Darwin starts putting all the pieces together. You've got the giant fossil armadillo in Argentina, the tortoises with their custom-fit shells, the finches with their specialized beaks. All of these clues were pointing to one powerful, unavoidable conclusion. Species weren't fixed at all. They changed. They adapted to their environment as part of a constant, relentless struggle to survive.
So Darwin finally gets back to England. He's got the what figured out. Species change. He's sure of it. But he was still missing the how. What was the engine? What was the actual mechanism that was driving all of this incredible adaptation? And you know, the final piece of the puzzle didn't come from a dusty fossil or a far-off island. It came from an essay he was reading about economics, of all things. An economist named Thomas Malthus had written about this constant struggle for existence in human populations, how we can reproduce way faster than we can grow food. And for Darwin, reading that was like a lightning bolt. He thought, wait a minute, what if this struggle isn't just for humans? What if it's happening to every single living thing?
And that was it. That was the engine he was looking for. He called it natural selection. Let's break down how it works, because it's actually pretty simple when you get down to it. So first, you have competition. Way more individuals are born than can ever survive, so there's a constant battle for resources. Okay, step 2, variation. If you look at any group of animals, like these rabbits, they're not identical. They've all got tiny differences. Maybe one is a little faster or has slightly better eyesight. Then comes selection. A predator shows up, let's say a fox. This creates a selective pressure. The rabbits that just happen to have a trait that helps them survive, like being a bit faster, are more likely to escape. Nature is literally selecting for speed. Step 4 is the big one, inheritance. The survivors, the faster rabbits, get to have babies, and they pass on those good, speedy genes to their kids. And finally, step 5, evolution. You just let this process repeat over and over for thousands and thousands of generations. Slowly but surely, the whole population of rabbits gets faster. That's it. That's how a species changes over time. So, in 1837, Darwin sits down with his notebook and sketches this simple branching diagram. And above it, he just writes 2 words, I think. This was his first sketch of the tree of life. See, his idea was suddenly way bigger than just one species changing. It was that all life on Earth was connected. We all branched out from a single common ancestor, spreading out over millions of years, just like the branches on a tree.
Darwin knew. He knew he was sitting on an idea that would change the world. But he wasn't excited. He was terrified. I mean, his theory flew directly in the face of the church and established beliefs. He was deeply afraid of the backlash, of the controversy he knew it would cause.
So what did he do? He waited for 20 years. 20? He kept this world-shattering theory a secret, only telling a few of his most trusted friends. He just couldn't bring himself to publish the most important idea of his entire life.
And then comes the twist in the story. In 1858, a letter arrives. It's from another naturalist, a guy named Alfred Russel Wallace, who's out collecting specimens in what's now Indonesia. And in that letter, Wallace lays out the exact same theory. He'd figured out evolution by natural selection, completely on his own. Darwin must have been absolutely floored.
That letter lit a fire under him. Suddenly, it was a race to publish. Just a month later, a joint paper from both Darwin and Wallace was presented to a scientific society. And then the very next year, 1859, Darwin finally published his life's work, the book on the origin of species. It sold out. On the very first day, the secret was out, and the world was never, ever going to be the same again. You know, the idea that Darwin and Wallace brought to light, it completely changed how we see ourselves and our place in the universe. It showed us that we're all part of this one ancient, massive, interconnected family tree. And that engine, natural selection, it's not ancient history. It's still running, all around us, all the time. Which leaves us with a pretty fascinating question to think about, doesn't it? If nature is still selecting, what traits is it selecting for in our world right now?